Okay, I wanted to show you guys really quickly the template that I'm sending out that you can get started on this week since we won't be having class on Tuesday. So I left a lot of stuff in here that you won't need just so you can look it over and get in some samples of what it would look like. So you're going to see at the top there's report meeting type. I personally, for this assignment, recommend you say it's an initial, not a try, because that'll mean a lot less information that you need to include. And then you'll see at the top, we do have the option to make it a multidisciplinary. So that would be like if your SLP or your special ed teacher was doing it with you, but you are not. So I'm just going to go ahead and take that out. Anything you see in highlight needs to be altered or updated. And again, there's a lot of stuff in here you don't need, but I wanted you to see some sample language. So first, you're going to pick your reason for referral. So likely you can just do a general referral. You could make it a parent request referral. You could make it an IEP team referral. Like this is where you might see kiddos who are in under SLI only, but they're having a lot of either behavioral issues or their academics are starting to really get impacted and they want to look at different areas. So now we're looking for SLD. So this is a common one where you might look at SLD. Or if it's a triennial. The only reason I recommend you don't say it's a triennial is, again, there's going to be more information you'll need to kind of make up for your sample report. So I would just make this be an initial and delete this. But I'm not going to delete it because I do want you to have a chance to kind of look over and see what a template does look like. Okay, so I would recommend you pick one of the first three, just decide which one you want it to be, and then you're going to fill in with the areas of strength and weakness for your child. This is filled out before you complete testing, so it's kind of based on the reason for referral. But we're just going to kind of make it up, and so if you need something, you can just say the concerns were with their reading comprehension and decoding, for example. Okay. And then on all of them, you're going to put the area for suspected disability. So you'll see right now, all of them are listed, but I'm just going to go ahead and delete it right now. All we're concerned about and all we're looking at for the sake of this report is specific learning disability. Social, emotional, and adaptive sections were removed from this template. And if we were looking at any other eligibility area, we would need to look at those as well. Okay, so again, when I'm working through a report, I leave everything highlighted until it's done. And once it's done, then I get rid of the highlighting to let me know the section's already been completed. I have a lot of different assessments. I deleted the ones that you for sure aren't using, but you guys will need to go through. I'm not sure which cognitive you're administering. So at the end of testing, like we are using BMI. So I would unhighlight this one, right? But go through whether I don't know if some of you used the CTOP. I know a lot of you use TAPS, for example. So just go through, delete the tests you did not administer. I recommend you leave this section till the end because you might administer some things in the following weeks in class. So just leave this section for now. The main sections that you can work on at this point in time would be the background information. To make this really easy on yourself, pick your age of your student. And if you don't have your student yet, and you're not sure on the age, you don't even complete this yet. But for all students, I would just say that they're English only. So you would delete this entire section talking about looking at their second language exposure. You would delete all of this. And all that would be left is this section that their primary language is English. And so all assessment results are administered in English. I am going to leave it, however, because I do want you to see a sample, what we would look at when we are considering how home language might be impacting them overall. And that's a significant factor when we're looking at SLD, but for ease of ruling that out, we're just going to say they're English only, okay? Even if your student is not, let's just say that for the sake of this report. Okay, but I am leaving it for you to look at. For school history, just quick, my student is going to RUSD because this is an RUSD template, but you would just change it and say what school they're at. If you don't know, you can delete this because I'm not too worried about this, but this is part of record review. When you pull their cumulative file, you'll look through and add this in. For attendance history, I recommend you just say they're not absent more than 5 or 6 days a year because then we have to consider how that has impacted their learning. So we're just going to pretend our student has fantastic attendance history. And then for assertive discipline, we're just gonna say no assertive discipline records on file. So again, we don't have to worry about the social emotional piece. If we have concerns with that, we would do an extra section of the report, which is outside the scope of this class. And for grades, you guys can go ahead and delete this whole section. I don't expect you to make up fake grades. That's not a good use of your time. But I'm leaving it in so you can see a sample of what it looks like in a report. But again, just delete this whole grade section, the state testing results section. You don't need any of this. I just left it in so you can see what it might look like. Okay. For physical health and development, I don't want to make you guys make up fake information, but at the same time, I want to see you to see how everything pulls together at the end. So this is here for you to look at. The only thing that I want you to keep, we can delete this. The only thing I want you to keep is the hearing and vision, and I just want you to say it's within normal limits because that's one of the exclusionary factors we have to consider. So you would have had to have looked at hearing and vision. So again, you can delete everything else, but we're going to say they did pass their hearing and vision screening, okay? And you can delete these sections down here. I just need the checked box marked, okay? So all of that can go. Normally you would look at that, but for this class, hearing and vision is the primary thing we're focusing on. Again, if you said this is a try, you're going to say what services the student is receiving, but we're going to say it's an initial. And so this whole section would be deleted. But I did want to leave it in the template for you just to look through if you have time to kind of see how you would document previous or existing services. And because we are saying that this is an initial, there's not going to be any assessment results. So this whole section will get deleted. And at the bottom, you'll just write no previous assessments were available for review. But again, I'm leaving it for you to see an example. So for SLD, we would look at intervention history. I want to see what has the teacher tried and how successful has it been. If the student is making significant progress with interventions, then that's probably the way to go to keep them into gen ed and not necessarily need special education services. But we don't have any progress monitoring data to look at. So we're going to actually delete this whole section. I did want you to see some examples of what a psych might type up in this area. So we actually, it has FastBridge monitoring. We're not even using FastBridge monitoring this year at RUSD. So I'm going to delete this section, but if any of you are curious and want to see this full template, I will send it to you. But for now, we're just going to take this out. But just know you would need to talk about what their intervention history has been when we're looking at SLD. Okay. For interviews, I'm leaving this here, but the only interview you're going to include is parent interview. So you don't need a teacher interview. And this is more for like my students who are transitioning like ages 14 and up usually. So I wanted you to see a sample of that, but this is not required. Student interview is not required, and mental health interview is not required. The only time we really include those is potentially with an FBA or ERMS assessment. Okay. I'm not going to delete them because again, I want you to see it if you would like that. Actually, I am going to delete it. If you do want to see it or want a copy, I can send you the full report template with nothing deleted. I just want to make this a little easier on you guys. And so let's delete teacher too. Okay. For observations, I do want you to have at least one observation. If you're able to observe your student, fantastic. If you're not, just use the fake observation. Well, it wasn't fake, but the observation we did in class of the student on the YouTube video, and you can put that in there. I'm really just looking for your ability to document and make sure that it looks non-biased and give you any corrections on anything you might want to be think more about or things you might want to word a little differently. We're not doing a social observation, so I will delete that, but you are going to do a testing observation, and this will be of your student that you do assess. This is just kind of some sample language. You can tweak this and fill it in, or completely erase this and just type up a testing observation, whatever way you like. So this is just to kind of help. And then the most important piece here, I don't know what I just did, is going to be your observation analysis. So this is going to be your summary. What you're wanting to really point out here are things you see across settings. I saw this in a structured class setting. I saw this in academic testing. A lot of times we're doing a social observation. I noticed these like outside, even on the playground with peers. So you're really talking about what the behaviors are that you see and how it might impact them in the classroom. It could be positive behaviors that are helping support their learning in the classroom, but it could most likely, especially when we're looking at SLD, it might be things like they were off task, they needed a lot of prompting, things like that, for example. Okay. Let's go back over here. Okay. There's two statements you're going to choose based on the age of your child. Only pick one of these and delete the other. So if they're younger kiddos, and then this is if they're older kiddos. And I have a sample chart in here just to help parents understand. So this is the statement that you'll use if you're testing students who are Black or African American. Um, that was kind of our assumption for this class. And the reason why we weren't using things like the WISC and looking at processing areas differently. But we're going to go ahead and delete this from our section because you will be including your WISC results in here. And it wouldn't make sense to say we can't administer IQ tests and then report out on the IQ test. So we'll delete it for this. This whole section will get deleted. But again, I do want to leave it in. Actually, sorry. This whole section will get deleted like this. But I did want to leave it in here for you to look at. Okay. And now we're going to get to where you start putting in all of your assessment results. And you're going to see, this template's fairly long. Most tests that you can administer in here, you need to delete everything you didn't give. So if you gave the WISC, you're going to select everything else, right click, and then you're just going to hit delete 13 rows. And now you just have, there's a couple more to delete. And now you would just have, okay, delete 5 rows. And now you would just have your WISC full scale. I'm going to leave everything in here because I don't know if some of you are giving KABC or WJCOG or, did I get it back? There we go. Or any other measures. So I want to leave them in here for you, but delete everything you do not give. You'll notice the WISC has 3 different sub-scores you can pull out. So unless Sharon has asked you to do something different, you're typically going to be using the full scale IQ. The time I might use a nonverbal is if I am administering tests to a student who's English language learner and I see that the verbal pieces really pulled them down. That might be the only time where I think nonverbal is actually a better indicator of their overall ability. But unless you can explain why you're picking a different measurement, you're really going to want to stick with the main one that's reported, which would be full scale. So if you give the KABC, you've got those in here too. And I don't know why. Oh, here's WJCOG. So here's WJCOG if you administer that one. So again, just delete whatever you don't administer. You're not leaving empty boxes in here. Okay. And then here's the statement that goes with it. So if you use the full scale, you're just putting this and you're literally deleting everything else. But all the tests you could give, there's a little blurb here. And please, don't leave this. You need to fill that in with their score that they earned and with their percentile, as well as with the confidence intervals. So I know I talked about not necessarily using confidence intervals when I'm reporting scaled scores because it's kind of confusing. The one area you want to make sure you use your confidence interval is when we're talking about overall potential. We never want to reduce a kid to one number. This number represents a child. It's just not, best practices. So this is one area where we want to put that confidence interval. Okay. And now we're going to get into the different processing abilities. So first you're going to see, I have my definition. Here's our GC, and this is our comprehension knowledge. And so we're going to go back and look at the assessments that we gave and include our test results in here. So we would put our TAPS in here, and then you would also put your WISC in here, okay? I don't know if you guys gave the extended. If you did, you can put it all here, but it's not necessary. You would just keep the chart, and I would plug in their scores. So if they got a 90, I'm going to put a 90 here. If they got a 95, I'm going to put a 95. If they got a, 72, then you're over here typing in 72. So you can see on the chart where the number goes. But you're putting the standard score here, and then you're just putting the range that it fell into down here. So likely with the WISC, you're just giving those 2 assessments, and then you would be able to just delete the rest, okay? So again, you're not administering all of these, you're deleting everything you didn't administer. So if you did the KABC, these are the subtests you report on. If you did the WJCOG, these are the ones you'd report on. You will do this one. So I'm gonna actually highlight this. We did this in class. So this is required. So I'm gonna put it in yellow, so don't delete this one. You're for sure doing this, plus whichever one you did in Sharon's class, okay? Next, we get to fluid reasoning. We did not administer a test for fluid reasoning in class. So you will put your WISC ones here, delete everything else. But I want to show you, if you were assessing a student who's Black or African American, your best bet is going to be you can use your WJ achievement. So we can administer these. So those of you who did administer the WJ as your academic or who will be administering it, we're going to put those 2 scores in here. There's no overall composite, but we would just put okay, they got an 85 and an 89. And those are commensurate. So overall, I believe their fluid reasoning to be in that low average range. If that makes sense. And again, I didn't point it out, but when we got into fluid reasoning, you'll see that there is an explanation for parent of what, oh, I don't know what happened there, of what, that's interesting. There we go, of what fluid reasoning is. So you always want to make sure if parent asks that you can say what each processing area is. Okay, so there's our fluid reasoning, which will have the WJ achievement. If you gave the Wyatt, just leave it blank and only have your whisk in there. We didn't go over NEPSI animal sorting. This is a great one to give. And we didn't get to go into DCAFs for this class, but that's another great one you can give students who are African American. Okay, now we're in visual spatial processing. And so that's going to be our sensory motor and orthographic processing skills. So you're for sure going to put your WISC or whatever your cognitive was. And then you're going to see there's KABC. There's WJ Cog, Whipsy. Here we go, RAML. We will be putting these in. So on RAML, we're going to be administering all of these. These are the picture memory, the one where you're looking at the scenes of like the farm, the parks, and you're crossing off the differences. And then the design learning, where you're showing them the design and they're trying to copy it 4 times, the delayed, and then the recognition piece, which is the call booklet that the student crosses off which one they've seen before. Okay, and then you can delete everything else. I actually am going to delete everything else since I already know what tests you're giving here. I'm going to leave the cognitive ones because I don't know which cognitive you're giving, but I know that we are not doing this one, this one. I'm going to leave the TVPS in here because you did give that one. I love when this happens. Delete table. Okay. Perfect. So you will also put in the TVPS because we did administer this. So again, I'm going to highlight it to don't delete. We are doing this one and you are doing this one. Okay. And you are doing this one. We did a lot for visual. Okay. So you might be doing the talk unless you administered the Wyatt. If you administered the Wyatt, you won't need to do the talk, and I'll show you how to do that later. So I'm going to leave that one in. Oh, here it is. If you administered the Wyatt, you'll do this. So you only need to pick one of these 2, and this is going to help us look at dyslexia. Auditory processing, if you administered the CTOP, I'm pretty sure all of you administered just the TAPS, but I'm going to leave it in anyways. You can also pull out the Wyatt or you can pull out the TAPS. So both of those are in there for you depending on what you gave. And then WJ Cog has some stuff in there as well. Now we're into short-term memory where we worked with, you're going to have your WISC results, but we're also going to have our RAML, which is here. We're going to use attention and concentration, which is the finger windows test where they're poking their fingers through the holes, and the number letter where they repeat it. I believe it's I want to say it's test 5 and 6. And then we did not administer the RAML working memory. So I'm going to go ahead and delete these 3 rows because I know we're not doing those in this class. So it would just be the attention concentration. Okay. I don't think anyone did the CTOP, so I'm going to delete that too. And then we did do TAPS, so you can put these in. Normally on a report, you're not going to have this many scores and way over duplicate every processing area. You really will only need 2 commensurate scores per processing area. Obviously, this assessment is way overkill because we wanted to get you the experience with the different assessments. But just know, normal report, you're not going to have like 100 scores in it like we will in this one. Okay. And then you've got your TAPS auditory memory. So there's 2 here you'll see. And you're not going to report both of them. So you're just going to pick which one you want. I usually do this one unless there's a non-commensurate test, and sentence memory helps give me some additional information, for example. But you only need to pick one of those 2. GLR, you're going to have your WISC if you gave the WISC, or this from your KABC. We did not do this, so we're going to get rid of the CTOP, but you will be putting in the RAML. Okay, and these are the verbal delayed and that we gave. So were you reading your story about gardening or Paul's birthday or whichever stories you read. And then the verbal learning is the long list of words where it's either 13 or 16 words that students have to repeat after you 4 times. Okay. And then we're doing it after the delay and the recognition. When you're normally administering this test, if this is not an area of concern, I wouldn't even do the delayed. I would just do the immediate, and that's sufficient. Again, overkill for this assignment. But if memory is an area of concern, then I would do all three. WJCOG, we did not do this one, so I'm going to delete this one. So remember, you're deleting a lot of the stuff in here and only keeping what's pertinent to you. Processing speed, I know you did in Sharon's class, and we're not going to get into it for our class. With, I think most of you are giving the whisk, so you would just use this one. But there is a couple other things that you can get. WJCOG, WIPC processing. Okay. And then for executive functioning, we're using the RAML attention concentration. It's the same subtest we used for short-term working memory, and we're putting it in here twice. Not best practice to use the same tests in 2 separate areas, but this is what we administered for this assessment, and we're assuming executive functioning wasn't a significant concern. If it was a significant concern, I would have given rating scales and looked at it more in depth. We did talk a little bit about OHI, but we're just going to go ahead and do it here because we're not looking at OHI, we're just looking at SLD, so it's okay in that context. Okay, and then we're not going to give this one in this class, but I have just kind of the write-up if you gave the CTMT, but I'm going to go ahead and delete that for you guys. Okay. Then we get into the academic functioning. If you gave the WJ, you're just going to plot the scores in here. If you gave the Wyatt, you're going to plot the scores in here. And we're going to delete that. Okay, and then we get into eligibility. So again, for this, we are only considering specific learning disability. And you'll see specific learning disabilities, the only area that I have here. And so really what we need, these are the criteria they have to meet in the state of California to qualify. So first we need to see a severe discrepancy between their intellectual ability, so their full scale IQ, and their achievement in one of those academic areas. So this is first we're looking at academics. So I'm going to look at the Wyatt. Is there a significant discrepancy between their full scale IQ and their oral expression score, or their listening comprehension, or their written expression, or basic reading skills, reading comprehension, right, so on and so forth. So 1.5 standard deviations is considered, so between, I would say, between like 18 and up, right? If it's like 17, you're still going to use your clinical judgment. It's not just a numbers piece. The number gives us some guidance, but you really need to look at the overall picture. And do you think they have difficulty learning, right? So first I'm looking for, is there an academic deficit, right? And if there is, okay, now I can move to the next piece. Now I need to see a disorder in one or more of those psychological processes. So all the processing assessments we looked at, GA, GC, GV, is there something that they have that's significantly different from their overall ability? So here I'm looking for like, I'm trying to give you a number to give you some guidance, roughly like a 10-point difference. Again, an 8 might be significant to me. It's going to really depend. If their full scale IQ is 120 and their lowest processing is a 110, no, that's not an area of concern, right? So we need to kind of look at everything in context. And it has to be outside of not just it has to be a weakness, not just for them personally, but also for my normative measures, which means something below 85. Because if it's above 85, it's normatively not an area of concern. Meaning compared to their same age peers, they're learning at their pace. Okay. You're going to have problems where kids do have academic deficits, but there's no processing disorder. So then you'd have to mark no, and automatically one no means they do not meet eligibility criteria. Okay. My last one is I have to rule out exclusionary factors. So if you told me your student's been absent 100 days every year, I cannot rule that out. Of course, that's impacted them, and that could be why they're struggling. But what for this class, we're going to say that the learning problems are not the result of environmental advantages. Okay. The learning problems are not the result of hearing and vision, and they're not the result of emotional disturbance or lack of appropriate instruction. So everyone always gets confused on this. I'm going to say, yes, it's not the result of those things. So yes, it is not because of that. Sometimes people want to mark no, but the easy way to remember it is yes means they're eligible. So Yes, it's because of this. And yes, they have a processing problem. And yes, they have an academic deficit. 3 yeses means they qualify. Okay. So you're going to mark it based on your assessment results. And then you're going to write it up. So here's if they don't qualify, an example statement, a couple example statements, pick the one that's most appropriate for you. If they do qualify, here's a sample statement. If they do meet eligibility, and this will happen, especially for like other health impairment, or maybe your kid's doing fantastic in the gen ed intervention program, where you say, yeah, they do meet all 3 of those, but for special education, first you have to meet eligibility for the disability, which say this kiddo does. The second question is it has to be adversely impacting your education. So if you can't say, oh yeah, they do, you might see this right for autism. Yes, they do meet educational code criteria under autism, but it's not impacting their progress either socially, behaviorally, or academically. So they do not require special education, and that's the third prong. So first, yes, they have a disability. Yes, it's adversely impacting them, and yes, they require special education services to make progress. They have to be yes to all 3 of those questions to qualify. So you might say yes, they're eligible, but they don't need special ed, and you would type that up here. And then we're going to delete this, but I did want to show you in RUSD, every district's going to have a little different process. But if they are African American, here's how we would fill out if they do qualify. I personally do feel comfortable using an eligibility discussion myself and not making it a team decision. This is more if you make it a team decision, but that's going to be based on your comfortability and your district procedures. Okay. There's a bunch of sample statements, and I left all of them in there for you because I want you to be able to see them. But your best bet is going to be to use the top ones. Okay. This is a collective team report. So this basically means my assessment does not have a clear cut answer. So as a team, we're going to answer these questions and determine if they're eligible. So again, don't use that one, but I wanted you to see it. And then in pink, every report, no matter what area you're looking at, has to have a statement if they require low incidence materials. And so this is like our students who are deaf and hard of hearing. So you guys are going to say no, they do not, and you would delete this. Okay, like that. But I'm going to leave these statements in here for you. Okay, and then you would delete the pink too, like that. Okay. And then finally, your summary. You can copy and paste a lot of this from above. Usually when I'm going over my reports, I can just go straight to my summary. Okay, so you're just going to take the information from the top and paste it. So like when you're working in Google Docs, I usually just open a second window. Ideally, you have a second screen, and it makes it easier because then you can just look at it on one report and copy it over to this section. So this is, again, okay, the lazy way to do this is just copy your parent report and paste it here again. The less lazy way is to summarize what mom said in like 2 or 3 sentences. Also, feel free to use, I'm going to say this with caution, you can use AI to help you with the summaries, and where you would paste parent interview and say like summarize this in 3 to 4 sentences. The only caveat is remember that we have to keep everything for compliant. So in our district, we can do this because we have a Gemini subscription that is a closed system, which means nothing's going back out into the public. So everything I put in there stays within our little district portal. If you are using it for ChatGPT, and I know you guys don't have like an educational account, you need to change the names. So I will just, if I'm using ChatGPT, I will take out all the student name, the parent name, everything, and it'll just say student's parent. Then you can have that summary, and then you have to bring it back in and put their names back in. So please don't ever put any confidential information into AI. But that's one way to kind of ease your workflow. But for this assignment, I would much prefer you guys do it yourself because we want to really develop those skills and make sure we can summarize it on our own before we're using AI to assist us. Okay, your cognitive summary. So again, this says and or. That means you do not need all of these. Just pick the one that most applies to the assessments you gave. We have our dyslexia statement. We're going to go over this in class. Summary for academics. We're going to delete the social, emotional, and adaptive because we did not administer that, and the speech. Okay, and then your eligibility summary. So if they are not eligible, I would delete this and leave this statement stating at this time they do not appear eligible. If they are, then you're deleting this, and then you're, again, I don't want to see all of these. I just want to see SLD. just include a couple recommendations for the student, whether they qualify or not. It could be recommendations for Gen Ed to consider. I wanted to leave this in so you could see this is the statement that we use in our reports if we are using any kind of AI, and that could even be Grammarly. And then you guys can delete this whole section. Again, it's in here for you to see how we do it. But we're not doing multidisciplinary, so I'm going to delete that. And you would just put in your name. And that's it. So really, it's 42 pages, but you're, again, deleting a lot of information. What I would like you guys to have done this week, since you have the time, is at least do the interview and observation section. So you can get that typed up. You should be able to get some of the record review section typed up as well. If you have administered any tests, you can start plugging them in, and we'll just continue to work on this next week. But I hope you guys have a great week, and I'll see you next week, and we will continue with the RAML. Remember, we're moving this week to next week. So again, no quiz. Anyone who didn't finish Chapter 6 quiz, we will do that next week. All right. Thank you, guys. I'll see you next Tuesday.